special. And I think what Alpine need right now is a little boost of something special. And what I would suggest, of course, it might be slightly radical, but I think you give them one more year. You give them this year and perhaps next year in this partnership. And if it's still not cohesive, if it's still not, and you've seen them, um, brush hairs at multiple points in the last few seasons. Last year, Australia, they crashed into each other. Obviously, that was all a bit of there was all a bit of hubbub on the start line after the red flag anyway. But even so, it's a moment. And so I think you give it a year and a half. And if they don't perform, I think you start from scratch again. Something that has did to pretty good effect in the last year or so. And for all that they're extremely experienced drivers, I think they still might have some sort of ego lingering. And I just don't get a good I feel a lot of tension from Alpine. And I think maybe the driver pairing and maybe the pressure that they've been put under from management to perform to this standard in such a short period of time has not helped with that. Um yeah, but Amish, what do you think? Do you think that it would be too much of a sort of shift left in order to completely start from scratch within the next 2 years in terms of a driver partnership?
Um, I think in general, starting over again is is a big jump, but at the same time, you a team has to be prepared to do it. I'm not quite sure as to how much preparation goes into doing a whole reset, but in terms of where we are now in 2024, in 2 years' time, when we see new engine regulations, that might be an opportunity or a window as such for not just Alpine, but for other teams who will be struggling in the next 2 years to do that reset and to make their mark and claim a new sort of team. I think we've seen it work the most in 2014 with Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. I mean, Lewis Hamilton had been there the year prior, but I think they really made their mark in the start of the turbo hybrid era. Um, and I think who's to say that any other team from the midfield can do that? Can't do that.
Mm.
But yeah, I think a prime time would be to do this, like you said, would be at the start of a new era of F1, which is not long away in 2026.
Absolutely. You got two race winners, two Frenchmen. But this is a question that's sort of been lingering on my mind for a while. Which of these two drivers is better, Esteban Ocon or Pierre Gasly? Just in purely in terms of racing skill.
In terms of racing skill, um, I like to say Pierre Gasly. I think he has had his fair share of moments with Red Bull where he wasn't completely comfortable in the car and things weren't going so well for him. And I think you you need to consider all of his other achievements in order to block that out, you have to ignore that and consider that as an outlier to his achievements. If you look at his career, I think the year I like to highlight the most would be 2020. No, 2021, sorry. Even though 2020 he got his win, 2021, I thought the car was probably worse. And Pierre Gasly managed to do a very good
Fourth
job of
place almost
out
every
uh,
race. He was,
exactly of
yeah, he was there.
he was outperforming the car and leading the team very well. And I think that was a prominent mark in his career. As for Esteban Ocon, I don't think he's had a streak like that. And I
Mm.
think he's had problems, but not to do with the car, but to do with his driving as such. You've seen his relationship with Checo Perez back at Force India, and you've seen his uh, some mistakes which are
Right.
driver related. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go Pierre Gasly.
Mm. I think Gasly's had probably lower lows and probably much higher highs. Um, Do you think Pierre Gasly has passed his peak?
I mean, I think it's dependent on where he will go. If this season doesn't turn out very well for Alpine and Pierre Gasly, I'm going to go with yes. But I think there's still an opportunity for him to improve and find his prime. But I think it has to be in a team where he is really comfortable in the car and it's suited around him. So, like what I said, 2021, the car, even though it wasn't as great as expected, he was able to make it work, which means it had something to it. And that was the closest you'd get to a prime for Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, I think that Alpha Tauri at the time was obviously not as bad as it was now, but it was certainly a sort of seventh, sixth, maybe sixth, but probably seventh place car. And he was consistently scoring top fours. And yeah, Gasly's 2021 season was really impressive for me. I don't think he's going to hit that again, at least not in Formula One. I think he's past his prime. I think that he's not going to get a better race seat than Alpine in the remainder of his Formula One career. I think Ocon is not going to get another seat in Formula One. Um, I think that this when Alpine decide that they no longer want Ocon, that's Ocon done. I think that's him. We're done with the sport. Um, Perhaps a shift to somewhere like Haas when K-Mag and Nico Hulkenberg eventually sort of retire or are forced out. Um, but I think, yeah, Ocon obviously he has his flashes of brilliance, but I think Gasly's ability to manipulate his car to his will is more impressive than Ocon's, even though, of course, they've both statistically in terms of race victories, they are on the same level. And I think they probably have a similar number of podiums. I can think of Sakir 2020, two more in this Alpine stint. So I think they're probably on a similar number of podiums. Statistically, they're quite similar. But I think in terms of pure skill or pure racecraft, I think Gasly is probably superior. That may be slightly tainted by the fact that Ocon was forced to sit out 2019. But yeah, and I think both have the capacity at the same time to be, despite their sort of experience and age, extremely immature and flustered and hot-headed drivers. And so I think both have certainly their downsides, but I think Gasly's would be the safer option. So I think that if they were going to take anybody, either of those two, if they had to choose one to take through to the next era of Formula One, then they would probably choose Gasly, in my opinion. Um, but shifting back to the Chinese Grand Prix, what teams do you envision sort of taking a bit of a step up this weekend, perhaps from some lacklusterish form so far this year?
Um, I think I'm going to go with Aston Martin. I think last weekend it was definitely an opening to what they might be able to achieve this year. I think they just didn't play their cards right with strategy, and um, they needed their upgrades to really kick in. I think it was later rather than sooner, but and I don't think it was managed very well across the whole weekend. So I think if they learn from their mistakes in the Japanese Grand Prix, coming over to China, I definitely think they have something to prove.
Mm.
I think, which would also mean there's a lot of pressure on McLaren. I think more McLaren than Ferrari because Ferrari just seems naturally stronger than McLaren at this point. But I think the two the two midfield teams will definitely be battling it out in China. Um, I think as for the top, I think Red Bull, obviously they're going to keep in their place as usual. I don't suspect any downfalls. We
Mm.
never know because we didn't expect it at Australia. But yeah, I think Ferrari is doing a good job this season, consistent. It's better than 2022 where they were winning races, but very inconsistently. I'm glad to see this sort of new streak going on with Ferrari.
So you're thinking perhaps Max, Sergio Leclerc for the podium?
Perhaps so, but I think Carlos Sainz has definitely stepped up this season. Without an appendix, he has done incredibly well. Uh, and I think he's definitely in form now more than ever. I think this is most likely to be the prime of Carlos Sainz. He is behind Charles Leclerc in the standings, yet only by a few points. I think it's less than 10 points, and he's missed the race, which just goes to show his consistency. And I think that's really important. But I think if I had to give a prediction for next weekend or this weekend, I would say um, a Red Bull 1-2 with Sainz
Mhm.
P3.
Okay. My prediction for this weekend is Max win, Sainz P2, Perez DNF at the first hairpin, I think. Um, I'm gonna go Norris, Norris third, and Leclerc gets fucked on strategy. That's my predictions for this weekend. So Sergio DNF, Leclerc strategy failure, Norris podium. Look at him. Those are my predictions.
Okay,
Pretty bold. What do you think?
okay, confirmed. Yeah, that is it's bold. I mean, obviously not with Verstappen P1, but I think as much as I uh as much as Lando Norris is my favorite driver, I can't have too much faith in him getting another podium at this stage. I think they are on a roll, but I think with a track like China, I think power is definitely more important with the back straight being a
Hmm.
key overtaking position and the final hairpin. And I think car or teams such as Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari will definitely be up there. I think we're sort of sleeping on Mercedes here, even though I'm not the hugest fan. I think after their sort of poor weekend or last couple of weekends, Mercedes would definitely want to be stepping it up in China, especially given that they were the last team to be winning at the Chinese Grand Prix.
Yeah, for sure. I think Mercedes could step it up, but I think that at the moment their car is just letting them down with these sort of minor failures and these sort of performance struggles. So I would agree, usually, but I think Norris, I think if I was going to predict, if right now you sat me down and told me to predict the World Championship standings and the constructors at the end of the year, I would say Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, because I think McLaren, their gremlins are just if they have them, are pretty obsolete at the moment. Um, so yeah, I think I could see Norris walking away with the podium. But speaking of Norris and podiums, it's time for a segment that I've been not putting off, but I've been saying that would come true for a long time. But unfortunately has not until this moment. We're going to do a little bit of Formula One. What is more likely? So, Amesh, you don't know any of these statements that I'm about to read you, and I'm going to read you these statements, and I'm going to give you two options, and you're going to tell me which one of these two options is more likely to happen. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Norris on the podium in six of the remaining 20 rounds from now until the end of the season, or Alex Albon to Mercedes for 2025.
Um, Norris on the podium in six races
Wow.
for the rest of the season.
Why do you not trust Albon?
Well, I mean, if you look at, can it be six or more?
Sure, six or more, yeah.
Okay,
Not six
six or more.
exactly, like six or more.
Yeah,
Yeah, at least
yeah,
six.
at least six.